I
Go for
think
it.
so. I think everybody's here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to bring you another virtual presentation by the Boca Chamber. We're super excited to have Dr. Nelson here and Kathy Hurt, who will be presenting to you today on how to adjust to the new normal. I mean, it's just, we're all trying to figure that out. So before we go on with the presentation, I'm going to turn it over to Sophia Lopez to go over some little Zoom housekeeping.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Before we get started, I did want to mention a couple things. We will be recording this entire presentation, so it'll be available later this evening on our YouTube playlist for you guys to reference. We will also be sending in a follow-up email with the link with it, as well as Dr. Nelson and Kathy's contact information in case any questions come up later. You can reach out to them. We will be having a very interactive presentation today, which is great. So we'll be launching about 5 or 4 different polls. The answers are anonymous, so please feel free to participate. We will also be doing question and answers throughout, and then opening up at question and answers at the end as well. To ask a question, or maybe you have a comment, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you click that, you'll be able to upload your question, and then either myself, actually, I will be monitoring the questions, so I will verbalize those questions to Dr. Nelson as we are going through the presentation. And that is everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. And now for the introduction of Dr. Ms. Kathy Hurt, who is the Community Impact Director with FHE Health. Ms. Kathy.
Thank you so much, Chastity, and thank you, community members of Boca, for having this today. As Chastity said, I'm the Community Impact Director with FHE Health. FHE Health is a behavioral health program that is based in Deerfield Beach and Boca. And we service great many needs. We have a full range of services. We're a medically integrated program, and we work with first responders. We work with flight attendants, union members. Our what we usually say is we're the caregiver for the caregivers. So we hope that with Dr. Nelson sharing his expertise today, that you'll get a little bit better understanding that it's okay to ask for help, and to maybe end the stigma of having the conversation when we have things as simple as stress that's overloading our life. Dr. Nelson is the clinical director of FHE Health, and he is trained in the integration of psychology and medical practices, and he's a specialist in cognitive behavioral therapy. Dr. Nelson has been a licensed professional for over 20 years, working in acute, subacute, and outpatient settings. And he's also a frequent contributor in national and local publications. He's had extensive experience in presenting to organizations and at conferences, and he's been on several very important panels, and he is an expert in the areas of mental health, substance abuse, and integrated behavioral health care. Dr. Nelson has served as a therapist, supervisor, professor, consultant, writer, speaker, administrator in a variety of settings with diverse populations. So this amazing man does sleep sometimes, and I am very excited to be able to have you listen to some of his expertise. So at this moment, I present Dr. Nelson.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and it's really a pleasure to be here with all of our Palm Beach friends, and really want to offer support. We've been doing a lot of talks and appreciate the Chamber really reaching out to its members and trying to offer practical support for folks. And so I am glad to be here this morning, and would like to kind of go over a few things. A big part of this is I really want this to be interactive, and want to be able to get the thoughts and the ideas from you guys and how we can make this useful. A big part of what I've been doing over the past few weeks has really been trying to help people to deal with the changes and the difficulties that they've been facing. We don't really have a roadmap for what's been going on, and we actually don't really know the next stages. All we really do is take this one day at a time. But I'd like to begin with a little poll just to kind of see how people are feeling out there. And Sophia will share that. This is really just asking you really what your feelings are. And so if you'd like to take a second to kind of let us know how you're feeling right now. Great. Well, it's really nice to see that people are doing well. A big part of what's been going on for us is really adjusting to what we call the new normal. A big part of what this really is about a constant rolling change. And so for a lot of us, this really brings up anxiety. We've got lots of changes going on. We've got changes in our home life. We've got changes in our work life. We've got changes for ourselves. There's just so much that's going on, and there isn't really a right or a wrong answer to what we're doing. But for a lot of us, we need to be able to find how to take care of ourselves. It's really important that we remember, especially as small business owners or as supervisors, managers, whatever our roles may be in our work world, that we're really dealing with human beings, and human beings have real lives. I think in the past couple of weeks, it's really hit home for me. We have about 250 employees in our business, and how much I've been really drawn into their personal issues and family issues really have come up quite a bit. And in the process of that, I really had to learn my role and what I can do, and really reach out to resources that have been available for folks to be able to really balance all the different things that are going on. I think that's one of the biggest difficulties when we talk about our business world, is that we're really dealing with the business and the future of our businesses, as well as all the people. And people can be ourselves. It can be maybe the leaders or our managers or whoever the supervisory staff is in our businesses. It's also dealing with our employees. And then a big part of it is our customers, because our perceptions out in the community and our abilities to deal with their fears and concerns is going to make a huge difference in the ability of our business to kind of bounce back. Also important right at this point is to really talk about kind of the second wave of what we'll be facing. And unfortunately, the challenges are very many. We have the second wave is really the mental health, the coping skills, the adjustments that we are making as individuals, whatever role that may be, parent, spouse, worker, anything that it might be. And so that is really becoming a big concern right now. There's some challenges that we're facing. So a lot of folks, anxiety and stress is really a big deal for them, being able to cope with that. For a lot of folks, it's really the changes into their routines and the things that they've been doing on an ongoing basis in their lives, the things that give them the support that they need, and that has changed. And for a lot of us, we're really encountering this idea of really not knowing when the end point is. You know, for a lot of us, the changes really started when we said, oh, we're going to close things and doing the stay-at-home orders. Then when those were in place, we kind of got into a new space and we figured out kind of how we were going to do things. But for human beings, what we really like to do is we like to know that there's an end point. So if I'm going to be home for 2 weeks, okay, I can kind of put some structure around that and I can be okay with that. If we don't have that, then we feel really what we call uncertainty. And uncertainty is a big part of what we try to cope with and what we try to deal with in our day-to-day lives. Uncertainty is really the rule of the day right now. And the idea of trying to find the fix or get the right answer or the right plan is one that we're really not being able to find. And so helping people to be able to really slow down, be able to take care of themselves, and looking at what we can control. There's a big circle that's out there of things we can't control. And there is a smaller circle of the things that we can control. And so it's important for us to focus on the things we can do. And we'll be talking really about, beginning our process of talking about really anxiety and self-care. And I want you to think about this not just for yourself, but also for the people who are in your life. It could be your employees, it could be your families. It's really important that we be able to be mentally and physically at our best in the midst of changing times, because that creates some stability and it helps us to be more what we call resilient, the ability to bounce back when things do happen. So I'm going to ask for the second poll. And so kind of how people feel about the future. If you feel like you've got this, if you're nervous, maybe unsure, you feel unprepared, or really not too good. Let me know what you think. Oh, wow, good. Well, the majority of us are in a place where we've got this. We figured out our new normals and our new routines. And then there's a lot of folks that are really in the in-betweens. There's so many changes going on. There's so many things that we're not sure of. And with that, we kind of take it on a day-by-day basis. So I want to talk a little bit about dealing with anxiety and stress and self-care, because these are really important topics right now. So anxiety and stress are normal. There is no reason to be afraid of being anxious or stressed. There's no reason for you to be feeling like maybe you're going crazy or you can't handle this. In the midst of change, there's always going to be a normal reaction that people have. And so I always encourage people to be really aware of their emotions and what's going on for them. It's also important when you're running a business is to be in touch with the employees and the folks that are part of your business, because it's important that we remember that businesses run on people, and we've got to be mindful of how those people are and what their needs are. But starting with ourselves, there are some things that you can do practically that are really actually very helpful for you. And so first thing is really to limit the news. And so a lot of people are out there and they're reading every story. They're finding out all the terrible things. They're finding out that right now we have some possible things medication-wise and treatment-wise that are being helpful with the coronavirus. And these things all seem great and they seem neat, but we don't have the ability to really take this information and do something with it. And so I recommend to people is not trying to get too much news. Get some trusted sources with the real experts, the people who know what they're doing and know what they're talking about, and be able to limit the amount of time. Don't try to do this all day long. Don't be on your phone or you're watching the news all day long. It's really going to increase anxiety and it'll increase stress for you. And so try to have a little bit of that, but not too much. The second thing that's really important is really taking care of our bodies. In the midst of a virus, it's important for us to build up our immune systems, and that means taking care of ourselves physically, but it's also very important for us to take care of ourselves mentally, to be able to watch how the anxieties and the stresses come on, and what we do with those is so very important. So when we think about the idea of, how do I take care of myself? We think about how do I deal with my anxiety? We start with our awareness. Being aware of what we're going through. And again, this is true for both your employees, your customers. Where are we now? I always think of emotions as being signposts. They're really telling us to do something. If we ignore them and we don't do anything with them, then we're going to end up in a situation where they actually end up growing. In the matter of the coronavirus and all the things that we're facing right now, it's important for us to recognize that some stress or anxiety is going to be normal and it's going to be healthy. But how do we take our bodies and get them at their best? So there's a couple of things that I'm recommending to people, and these are things that you have control over and you can put some time and energy into. The first is exercise. It's really important that we reduce the stress and the anxiety that we have by doing some exercise. Your body actually releases chemicals when you're stressed. And so it's really a mind-body connection when you're stressed. And it's important for you to be able to alleviate that and to be able to do something that'll be helping for you to actually feel more calm. We know that in any situation, the more emotional you are, the worse the decision making you make. And as business owners, you know that you can't really just jump to a decision because you feel something. Or if you do, you got to be really prepared that maybe you're not always feeling exactly what's right. So in these situations, it's really important for you to be able to look at how you are taking care of yourself with the idea of exercise. 10, 15 minutes a day can be good for you. It doesn't have to be going to the gym. It doesn't have to be an hour, but a little bit makes a difference. The idea of getting outside and exercising, I try to recommend people, don't take your phone with you. Don't be going for a walk and text messaging everyone. Really give yourself some downtime. Give yourself some time to be able to relate to yourself. More cardiovascular activity is actually good. It burns off the stress chemicals that are released when you're feeling anxious or stressed. And in those moments, it's really important for you to be able to try to clear your mind. The better you do that and the more consistently you do that, the better you'll feel and the better you'll perform. It's really important. The next thing is sleep. Sleep is vital to our ability to both have a strong immune system and to be able to deal with stress, changing situations, and whatever the day might bring. So it's really important that we be able to set a regular sleep schedule. And this sounds really strange. We've noticed as people have gone into their stay at home or their work habits have changed, for a lot of people, they're now available, 24/7 at work. And so they're emailing at 10 o'clock at night, they're up at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting all these different reports or something done. The idea is that we've really changed our regular cycles. The best sleep that you can get is when you go to sleep at the same time and you wake up at the same time 7 days a week. That even means the weekends. Now, the idea of how much sleep you need can kind of vary, but you're really looking to 7 to 8 hours of restorative sleep. That's very important for you. When you go into that restorative sleep, your mind and your body is in a different state when you wake up. If you're not sleeping well, if you're noticing that your anxieties are taking over, if you notice that your routines have changed, it's really important to get into that space where you can actually go to sleep and then wake up at the same time every day. That gets your body running at its best. It really puts us into the best frame of mind, and our bodies are working and they know that they're going to get that sleep and that they're actually going to start to feel better. The other thing is to be able to watch what you're eating. This morning before we got on this call, I put on a pair of pants and I recognized that they were too tight. I couldn't blame it on the cleaners because I haven't been able to go to the cleaners. So I can tell that my level of activity probably is not where it used to be. And for a lot of us, we're going to find that as well. And our eating is really important. Our body needs basic building blocks to be able to take care of itself. Especially when you're stressed, it's important to be watching your nutrition. Eating healthy makes a big difference, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Just like with exercise, you don't have to be perfect at exercising. Anything you do is going to be beneficial for the way your body and your mind works. So when you're actually looking at what am I going to eat and what am I going to prepare or what groceries am I going to get, remember that that's really important. Vegetables, healthy diet, lean meats, all of those things are really important. Try to stay away from the carbs as much as you can. Try to look at the fuel that you're putting into your body and looking at that as being an important part of being resilient, of being able to bounce back because your bodies and your minds are at their best. Another thing is supports. Now, again, one of the biggest changes we've had is that we don't have the supports like we used to. For some families, we've seen great changes. Working in healthcare, I know a lot of people who actually aren't spending time with their families because they're too afraid of infecting them from coming from work. A lot of first responders are having to face this too. And so it's really changing the way that we operate, even at the most basic levels, like with our families. It's important, though, that we reach out and we support ourselves and others. We know that when people are in tough times, it's really important to be able to both share the way that you are feeling and to be able to give support. People actually report that levels of anxiety or depression lift when they start doing things for other people. It's important for you to be reaching out to your supports. It may not look the same as it used to. It may be a FaceTime, it may be a text message, it may be an email, it may be a Zoom call. Something that I've actually had to learn quite in depth, giving all of these Zoom talks that we've been doing over the past couple of weeks. I'm now an expert on Zoom. But the neat thing is I found out that in the course of this, actually interacting with people through these various means has really been helpful for me. It's important that you don't go this alone. And in any situation, you're not going to have all the answers. In fact, there probably isn't even a right or a wrong answer. The Chamber has been working very hard to connect people, being able to get out there, to hear what's going on, be able to share ideas, being able to get some support is really important right now. And so for our anxiety and our stress, it's important that each one of us make that a priority. Each of these things I've talked about is important to do every day. This is not something that you can do just one time and it's going to work. It's really important that you be able to put into your day all the supports that you need to be able to make you to function at your best. Sleep, exercise, good nutrition, healthy supports, and limiting the news and the anxiety-producing influences that might come from you on the things that you can't control. So that's very important. I'd like to throw out the next poll. We talked about what self-care has changed. These are some of the things that we start looking for people. Have you noticed that you've been not able to sleep as well? Have you noticed that you're not really exercising? Do you notice that your eating habits have changed? Do you feel less connected? Or do you actually think that you've really got a good balance and you're doing better now than you were before? Sometimes that's what happens, is when we actually get thrown into a new situation, we're able to kind of create a new normal for us.
Dr. Nelson?
Yes.
Hi, while we're waiting for the poll results to come in, there was a question.
Okay.
One of the viewers asked, what is your opinion of afternoon naps if you feel you aren't getting enough sleep at night?
Okay, that's a great question. Naps can be very good, but there are some constraints that you put around them. If you sleep too long in the afternoon, what you'll actually do is you'll throw off your sleep cycle. And so a nap of maybe 15 or 20 minutes is probably not going to be something that's going to affect you. If you end up taking an hour or 2-hour nap, you're actually going to interfere with your regular sleep cycles. And so it's important that you really limit those. Focus on your best sleep at night rather than trying to do lots of little naps during the day or things like that. Also, napping may be a sign of really avoidance. It may be kind of a shutting down, kind of an escape that we sometimes do. And so you just want to be mindful of what your body needs. Good. So I appreciate everybody being honest. We're seeing, probably across the board, a lot of folks that are doing some things less than they used to because of the change. And then some folks have actually adapted and changed and are doing better now. One of the great things about changes is that it really kind of reorders how we do things. And for some of us, we're able to focus on the things that are important to us. I have some friends whose kids are obviously at home because the schools are closed. And they said, although it's a lot more to manage, they really feel like they're getting so much quality time with their kids that they're now concerned about actually going back to work and then what that's going to look like. And so the family time has really increased and folks are doing a lot more stuff with them. So that can be helpful. If you do notice that you've made some changes and you're not getting the things that we've talked about into your daily schedule, then I'd encourage you to be thinking about how you could do something. Again, a little thing can make a big difference. It's taking time for our meditation each day. There's lots of great meditations on YouTube. Meditating is a way of us really getting to a point where we can kind of shut out the outside world, we notice what's going on for us, and we give ourselves a time to take a break. Prayer, reaching out to our spiritual supports, reaching out to activities that we enjoy each day to put into our schedule can also be very helpful. Now, when we're also thinking about this process, we really need to take some time to look at the transitions and changes, both in our businesses and in our own personal lives. I'd like to ask people if they could share with us about their own leadership skills. The idea of, as you're going through these difficult times, the changes, how do you really see yourself? You know, do you feel confident in what you're doing? Are you not sure? Are you feeling like really just every day is up in the air? Let's take a look and see what people think related to their business management skills. Good, good. So we're kind of across the board a little bit, but we've got some really good ones. The idea in leadership when you're going through a change situation is really vital. We have a term that we call transformational leadership. And transformational leadership is the ability to really inspire yourself and others to be able to do the best that you can. It's the idea of really putting yourself in the situation and being able to give the skills and the direction and the leadership that you need. There's lots of resources that are out there. Reaching out to those is really important in these times. But it's important as a business leader to be strategic in what you do. I've been a consultant with businesses for many, many years. And one of the things that I always find for folks is, again, that they're going to be in a place where they make emotional decisions. They're kind of scared or concerned, and because of that, they might react. It's important not to do that. It's important to really be in a space where you can look at the numbers, you can look at the data, you can look at the information that's available, and to try to do the best thing. But your ability to inspire yourself and others is really very important. For some of us, these soft skills, as we often call them, are really the biggest determinant of how we do in business. And so as we go through the process and we start to look at the ways that we're making decisions and choices, we want to be mindful of the data. We want to be mindful of what's going on, the trends. One of the things that's real helpful is that we're seeing now in other places where they've started to open up. When you start to see that, you're going to notice that it wasn't really from the model maybe we thought of before, which was, okay, here's the way it was. We're going to have this break, and then it's right going to go back. Unfortunately, that's probably not the case. And we're going to be seeing a lot of different iterations of this process of what does it mean to open back up. And it's important as a leader to be mindful of the different steps you're going to take. A lot of folks are looking at the business loans, they're looking at cash flows, they're looking at ways that they can kind of bring money into the business. And the idea is that you really need to have a plan A and a plan B, because the idea is things aren't going to come back as they were as before. And so as we look at that, we want to look at the idea of staying lean, making good decisions, getting the supports, whether that's talking to your insurance agent about what are the liabilities about bringing customers back into our facilities. It's looking at the health department's ideas and guidance on how we need to protect our employees and our businesses. We have a lot of great excitement that's going on, but we're seeing that in a lot of places that business isn't really bouncing back. And so a lot of business leaders are starting out small and then learning ways that they can learn kind of from the situation and then move the business back into where they need it to be. It's really important in this process when we talk about that transformational leader, inspiring others. A big part of this is transparency. You're dealing with a lot of different stressors each day. You're going through your game plan. You're looking at what you can do. As you go through that, it's really important that you communicate with your staff, with the customers that you have. We're really lucky if you've really gotten onto the bandwagon with social media and looking at those different electronic ways that we reach out to our customers. I think the Chamber is a great example. I never really feel like the Boca Chamber sends out too many emails, and everything that they send out is informational. It really makes me feel a connection with the Chamber. The same thing is true in our businesses. But it's important with the employees that you have that you also communicate as well. In the process of this, as a leader, you're going to be called on to maybe do a lot of different things that maybe weren't the norm for you before. I'm really encouraging people to be mindful of the supports that they have, whether it's your attorney, your accountant, your insurance agent, other business owners. This is really a time for you to make the best decisions you can as we take each of the next steps in the process of opening up and trying to getting back to a new sense of normal. So in that, please don't try to feel like you've got to make all the decisions yourself. For some of us in small businesses, you may be just you and your spouse that you're working with. For others, it may be the employees that you have. We've got a lot of different things that are going on for people personally and professionally. A big thing right now that businesses are facing is that having employees come back into the offices. What does that look like? So a lot of us came from shared office spaces and large facilities. And the fact of the matter is a lot of employees are now at the point where they don't want to come back to that. They're too afraid. I think in my own experience with our employees, I didn't really understand how much of a personal impact this would make on people. I was pulled into discussions at the very beginning where we were really looking at how we could change the business and how we would need to downsize. Then it became an issue where we basically had to create processes around people being out, leaves, the idea of furloughing folks, the idea of the unemployment process, all of these different things. It's also that way for our employees as well. But the idea of leadership that really communicates what's going on, both listens, allows their team to give input, and to be able to really look at the overall situation is going to make you best prepared as you're getting into this new normal of being open and what that's going to look like. A big part of that is when we open our stores or businesses is the health and safety concerns. And so there's not a lot of directive out there for folks. Every situation is different. And now, as we have in Palm Beach County that we're opening up, and I saw the email from our president this morning that, salons and restaurants and things will be opening. The idea of really being able to make a safe environment is really important. I think at the beginning of this, I was most afraid that we would have a case of coronavirus at our business. And I thought to myself, I said, that would really be a terrible situation. Luckily, we've put a lot of measures in place in our business, and we're very strategic in being able to limit the risk that we could have. But in limiting that risk, we also limit our business. And so again, this is not a one-time thing. This is really about a longer haul. For a lot of us, when this first started, we were just doing damage control. It's really important as you're looking at the decisions and choices you need to make for your business is being able to look a little bit further ahead. Look at what's been going on around us. Look at what we've seen. Look at what the concerns are of people, both our employees and our customers, and try to, as best as you can, be able to put in place the processes, the procedures, the plan that's going to be most helpful for you to maximize whatever business you can have. It's not going to be 100%. But the idea is that we don't want to have a missed opportunity as we're opening our businesses, as we're doing things. And we want to make sure that the impression from the public is that we are really on top of things, that we are safe, that we're protecting people, that we're a part of the community, and that we are all doing what we need. As you start looking at the next stages, it's important to ask yourself some questions. First off, what are we doing right and what are we doing wrong? At this point, it's really important that you be aware of where your vulnerabilities are. It might be in your management, it might be in kind of the area, the issues that are going on in your community. It may be maybe some of your own limitations as a leader. It's really important that you get an idea of what that is. And then also what you're getting right. What's important if you're communicating with folks, if you're doing the things that you need to, if you've looked at the financials and you put things in place, it's important to know where you stand. The second thing is that what needs to change right now. Again, this isn't something you have to get married to and practice for the next 2 years. It's really important that we have flexibility in leadership. I always give people the example. I say flexibility is probably the most important thing in a leader, because that flexibility allows you to take information in the moment and to make the best decision that you have. I use an analogy. So think about 2 types of trees. One is you might have a very rigid kind of tree, a hardwood. You know, it's firmly planted in the ground, it is deep roots, and it is going to stay in place. A storm comes. Big wind, maybe one of our hurricanes here in South Florida comes, and what happens to that really rigid tree? Well, it ends up getting hit by the wind, it falls over, the roots pull out, and it dies. As opposed to the other kind of tree, which you think about like our palm trees. I mean, I'm constantly watching them flow in the wind. What happens? They actually adjust, and as the wind keeps coming, they just go back and forth, and then they end up to live for another day. That's a big part of a model for leadership, is being flexible, taking things on a case-by-case basis, getting the support and the data that you need, but at the same time, recognizing that you don't have to dig in on one thing or another. The more adaptable that you are, the more that you've taken care of yourself, your body, the people around you, all of these different pieces all contribute to organizations, businesses that can respond well to a situation. That's a really important process that for each of us to really kind of plan out and to think about for ourselves. Now, I'd like to really kind of open it up right now for questions and kind of talk about maybe what things have been working well for us, or things that you've been able to do, or any questions that you have. Sophia will open us up.
Hi, just a friendly reminder, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can put your questions in there. You can also submit them anonymously if you don't want them to be public. While we're waiting for some questions to come in, I did have a question of my own. I was reading this article not too long ago about, adjusting to the new normal. And someone suggested, thinking of this as like a narrative and just a chapter in your life. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's actually the idea about how we deal with big changes in our lives. It's really a process, and it's a lot like grief and loss, is that when we're immediately in the situation, we tend to be full of emotions. We kind of get through it, sometimes for better, for worse. Some of us use good coping skills. We reach out to the people we need. We take care of ourselves. We get through it. Some other folks maybe don't use the best skills that they have and actually end up creating other problems. Right now, we're seeing a real spike in alcohol use. We're seeing a lot of mental health issues that are not being dealt with, and so people are actually getting worse. So that usually creates more problems and issues. But what happens over time is that we tend to move out of the space where we're just all high energy, high emotions. I always think back to 9/11. For a lot of us, we can really remember, I remember where I was on 9/11 and really thought the whole world was changing. And we went through that. We had our emotions. We kind of, looked at what the situation was. As a nation, as communities, we made changes. I remember back to the days when we used to actually be able to go to an airport and meet people at the gate. Young people don't even understand that anymore. we made changes and adjustments, and we made those and we were able to cope with it, and then we moved forward. So this is not going to be the be all and end all. It's not a completely traumatic experience. And as we go through this, we will find ways to adapt and to adjust. And eventually it'll be something that we look at and we don't really have the emotional angst that we otherwise would have. And that's a great thing to remember, is that there is hope. We'll adjust, we'll do what we need to do. There's going to be a lot of things that are created out of this that are going to be negative, but human beings are resilient. Thanks, Sophia.
Thank you. A question, how have you changed or maintained your leadership style?
That's a great one. I always thought of myself as being a very relational leader. So I have about 50 employees that report to me directly. And we're a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week business. I think a big part of what I've been doing is I've really been opening up communication with people. A couple of things I've done is I've tried to create time for my employees to be able to talk about their personal lives, their situations, kind of what's going on for them. I've had a series of kind of support groups that we do and small groups with the managers, and we've been doing those ongoing. And having that time is really important for folks. And so sometimes they do funny things and they'll start dancing, or people will, show some videos or things that, made them feel good, cat videos, whatever it might be. But also just to talk about the strains for them, because a big part of this is not just the work. And good leaders really see that workers are not just workers. They're really people. And you can build a lot of loyalty with your employees if you show that you're there and you care about them. That's one thing I've done. The other thing I've done is I've really gotten used to really touching base with my management team, and by touching base either by a phone call or text messages each day. And I'm always really mindful to ask them a very important question. I always ask them, I said, is there anything I can do to help you? And so I've had some pretty strange answers to that question. But the idea behind it is that they really feel that I care about them, which I do. And I understand that there's a lot going on in their worlds. And that idea of really communicating and offering support for your staff, for your leaders, getting it for yourself, I think is really important.
Thank you. Next question. How would you suggest two partners dealing with COVID-19 that see the risk or lockdown, et cetera, from completely different perspectives? One is an absolute quarantine and the other is getting out, practicing social distancing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely there are different ways that people are adjusting to the news, the information, and we're not all going to be on the same space. One thing that the coronavirus does is, because it upends everything that we've been doing, is that it's really important that you have that discussion with the people who are in your life about kind of what the new normal is going to look like. People can't read your minds. You're going to find that some people are not going to approach this the same way that you are. At that time, you have to make some decisions and some concessions and some compromises for how you're going to deal with it. And that can be tough sometimes. I think one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing right now is we see a lot of older adults who really don't feel like this is going to affect them. They don't want to change their life. Maybe they're a bit stubborn. And I've had a lot of my patients ask me, and they're saying, my mother's going out, she's, continuing to her bridge club, my grandmother still wants to go to church. They're not willing to change things. What can I do for them? And the fact of the matter is, you really can't tell people how they lead their lives. I find it's best to always begin the discussion with, here are my concerns, or I'm concerned for you. Again, at the end of the day, you're going to have to find out what kind of compromise works for you. But I think it's always better not to tell people what they need to do, not to be the expert in a situation and try to force people to do things, because it doesn't work in the end. The idea is to really share your feelings and concerns, let them be able to make some choices, you make some choices, and hopefully you can find some kind of middle ground.
Thank you. That are all the questions I see right now. Again, we'll be sending a follow-up email to everyone. So, sometimes questions come later and you meant to ask them during the presentation. So please feel free to reach out and email, Dr. Nelson or Kathy afterwards.
Right.
Dr. Nelson, did you have any last comments? I will bring Kathy back on if you would like.
Yeah, big thing. Just as you're kind of going through this, you may need the support that you hadn't recognized earlier. The idea of when does it become significant that I really need to reach out, maybe to my doctor or to a mental health therapist. Again, you need the supports that you need. What we find in situations like with the virus and all the changes that are going on is that for some people, they're just going to have that normal stress response. For other people, this is really going to become a traumatic event. And what you're going to notice is that if you're just having anxiety and stress, it's probably going to go away and it gets better. You're not going to see that you're getting worse over time. If this is really something more significant, and again, this could be for us, our family members, our employees, the idea is if it starts to get worse, it's not really going away. Maybe you've tried to do some helpful things and you just can't do it. I want people to really know that it's very important that you reach out, that you get support. There are a lot of ways to deal with these things, but sometimes you need a professional. Talking to your doctor, your healthcare provider, reaching out to therapists. A big thing for in businesses is really make sure you've got some kind of support for the folks in your business. Kathy is great with me because we get a lot of people asking us, who can I talk to? I need some help with this. I've had a lot of, one of the most really gut-wrenching requests I had was from a mother whose daughter is a nurse. And she said, I can see my daughter is spiraling out of control and she's not sleeping. She's not taking care of herself. She's becoming really irritable and angry, and which is often a sign that we don't look at with maybe feeling depression. People get really frustrated, angry, upset. And she said, I can see these things. She said, can you let me know the name of some counselors because I really want to give those to her. I think that's always going to be out there, and I want to encourage people to reach out. Sometimes we have to add things to our tool basket. We have to get some supports that maybe we otherwise wouldn't reach out to, but really being proactive with these things is very important. And so the more that you can do for yourself when it's smaller, the better you avoid kind of a bigger situation or problem. So, Miss Kathy, do you want to close us up?
Dr. Nelson, thank you so much. As many times as I sit on these with you, I always learn something new. So in closing, I would like to share that I will be sending over to Chastity and Sophia a little open letter of support with an 800 number that you're all free to call, which is at no cost during this time. And also we did a handout that was geared a little bit toward the first responders, but it's got some great general care information on it that I will include to the ladies also. So I look forward to hopefully meeting you all in person. Please, when we get together, come up and talk to Dr. Nelson and I and let us know you were on this and what your thoughts were. Thank you, Chastity and Sophia, for hosting this, and we hope you all have a wonderful day and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nelson and Kathy, for doing this presentation for our members. We greatly appreciate it. We thank you all so much for being on with us today. Please be sure to check out the Chamber's website for an update on what's going on with the coronavirus and what's going on in our community. We update that page daily and several times a day. Share our events. If you know someone who would benefit from seeing any of our events, whether they're a Chamber member or not, we want to help as many people as possible, so you can share the events as well. It is free. And make sure you download the Book of Chambers app. There's tons of information at your fingertips. And if you like what's going on with the Chamber, or maybe you don't like, just share your feedback. We can only grow with information that we get from our members to know if we're doing stuff right or where we can tweak things. You know, we can only help get better with your feedback. So make sure you share your feedback. And I want you all to stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.